there are Canadian parliamentarians wittingly working with foreign governments. The amount of politicians entangled in foreign interference is large, and the honest ones had better wake up and understand what they're getting involved with.
This is just the tip of the iceberg. Welcome back to Moose on Loose. My name's David. Today I'm going to unravel liberal corruption. It just gets worse and worse. Canada's top journalist, Sam Cooper, he's come out with a bombshell post on his blog, as well as he's making media appearances. I've been doing some digging myself and connecting some dots, and I found some interesting things as well. Let's jump into this. First off, we got this report here dropped by Sam Cooper on his blog. It says exclusive, the RCMP, CBSA, and Trudeau government lost U.S. trust in the street fentanyl fight. Surveillance operations have raised alarms after placing Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and a former cabinet minister in proximity to Asian organized crime suspects. So we go down here, it says veteran law enforcement officials, both active and retired from the United States and Canada, have come forward with explosive allegations suggesting that Canada's federal government may have systematically obstructed investigations into the highest levels of Asian organized crime. Can you believe this? I think at this point we can all believe this. According to these sources, American agencies, including the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, have grown so alarmed by suspected corruption and legal loopholes in Canada that they have effectively sidelined Canadian law enforcement from sensitive investigations and intelligence sharing. This is absolutely outrageous. So we got this bombshell that's dropped here on the, once again, the Daniela Cambone show. She's doing some great interviews over here.
Daniela, I'm hearing from current and former high-level police officers that say, despite what the Globe and Mail or Daniel Dale at CNN are reporting about, 40 kilograms is it. No, Canadians have no idea the level of criminal money laundering running through our cities that's connected to this. So that's the issue. I just want to add, before we look, where do we go from here? What Mark is saying about a hurricane, that hurricane is going to hit us with 25% or more if we don't put a real fentanyl czar in place. That is someone with credibility, that the U.S. government, look, they're not going to be fooled if you put a Justin Trudeau office lackey in that position. They need someone that can assure the American government that the RCMP will work with the DEA if they want to put a wiretap on a Triad boss or a cartel boss in Vancouver and Toronto, because it didn't happen before.
So this is interesting. Trudeau hasn't appointed that street fentanyl czar, and maybe this is why, because he wants to put someone that will not expose this, and the Americans will know it if they appoint one of these corrupt politicians on his team right now. The Americans know it. Once Trudeau appoints someone, the Americans are just going to go through it with a fine-tooth comb and figure out who this person really is. They probably already have a laundry list on all of these people, so they'll just pull up the folder and say, okay, who's this one attached to? What are they involved in?
The last point is, look, this U.S.-Canada strike force on organized crime, I believe the American government is going to want to see legal memorandums of understanding signed with Ottawa saying, this isn't just pretty language to put off a tariff. This is some sort of joint laws between Canada and the United States where we will have, you working with the fentanyl czar. If the FBI and DEA want to come up to Vancouver and bust one of these Triad command control money laundering nodes, which, by the way, I'm afraid, I'll say it, some of these bosses are connected to funding of the Trudeau Liberals. I'll just drop that because it's true. And I believe the Trump administration knows it. So the Americans, we're now, in the Germany-Greece European Union relationship. Canada and United States are there. They're not trusting our word anymore. They need to see our homework.
Wow. He just dropped that, saying Triad bosses from Asia funding the Trudeau Liberals. Coming from Canada's top investigative journalist right here, Sam Cooper. NDP complicit and RCMP complicit? This is a great question. Backroom deals between BC's Eby and the Trudeau Liberals. David Eby, one of his advisors, is connected to the United Front CCP group in China. Trudeau sure doesn't hesitate one bit in writing them CDSA exemptions. Funny how all these pharmaceutical companies that no one has ever heard of popped up out of nowhere to provide safe supply, follow the money. Yes, Trump admin knows it. Why do you think Danielle Smith is going back and forth to the US? She's putting out fires figuratively. Where is the media? They're nowhere to be found. This is up to basically YouTubers to bring this stuff up because the media doesn't want to touch it. Why would that be? I'm surprised Sam Cooper still has a job. So his job is the Bureau. That's his website. You guys want to go support him there? He's the best of the best here in Canada. Several veterans of Canadian law enforcement argue that while US President Donald Trump's critiques of Canada's handling of the street fentanyl trafficking and border security are politically charged, often both harsh, they underscore an uncomfortable reality. Canada is increasingly perceived as compromised, either incapable or unwilling to confront entrenched transnational crime networks. American and Canadian sources alike describe a nation whose law enforcement agencies are disarray, inhabited by suspected infiltration at the highest levels, instructing investigations into billion-dollar street candy networks and money laundering operations. I've been calling it here for months and months. The money laundering is obvious. Foreign Affairs Canada. How much of that is real, where it's helping people in Africa and whoever, Papua New Guinea, and how much of that is money laundering? So what you're about to see here next is very interesting. This article is back from 2023. It says Auditor General says she won't probe donations made to Trudeau Foundation. Why would that be? Why wouldn't you want to look into that? And after I started looking around, I found this post here, which shows a graph. And the most notable thing here is the blue. It says foreign donations being this. Now, that's quite a large increase here in 2015 when Trudeau got into power. So obviously we have a ton of foreign money coming in, which already stinks of corruption. So if we go over to this article here, you can see it here. So this is on the National Post. It's not someone made up this graph. What's also interesting is this one, a few years before this, 2017, we've got political activity audits of charities suspended by the Liberals. Now, the first thing you might ask is the Trudeau Foundation a charity? This organization is designated by the Canada Revenue Agency as a registered charity. Yes, Pierre Elliott Trudeau Foundation registered as a charity. So why wouldn't they want people to look into these donations? Could it be that Justin Trudeau has friends in Asia with a lot of money and an agenda coming from the CCP, coming from Xi Jinping? Now, if we jump over to this one on True North, they did an excellent interview here as well with Sam Cooper.
Canada has a huge difficulty in not only prosecuting massive money laundering offenses, but they can't even police can't get wiretaps on known Mexican cartel operatives or Chinese Triad operatives that have set up in Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal. And if you're saying, where's the proof of this gaping weakness, the Toronto Dominion Bank case, where this Canadian bank is prosecuted in a deferred prosecution agreement, something like a $4 billion Canadian fine. And my American law enforcement sources said, look, the US government had to step up and point to the massive fentanyl money laundering running through that Canadian bank. And furthermore, their investigation showed that the what they call the command and control of the Chinese organized crime behind that money laundering operation is in Toronto and Vancouver. And they're setting up the whole money laundering system for the Mexican cartels that are, the ones pushing the fentanyl in American cities and streets. It's Chinese government supported criminals that are based in Toronto and Vancouver because of our weak laws that are running the Western Hemisphere money laundering. They're the masterminds of this. And as my DEA sources say, not many people know that Chinese organized crime is at the top of the food chain for international organized crime in the Western Hemisphere. It's not even the cartels. That it's a whole economic system that's based on, money moving around the world in so-called underground banks that are connected to Chinese diaspora communities and organized crime that's shocking to believe is supported by Beijing.
So what he's talking about here is this new developments in TD Bank money laundering case. This was a huge case, and the penalty came from America. This was not touched by Canada. TD has to pay $1.8 billion criminal penalty, which added to the civil fines brings the total to $3 billion that the bank has to pay to settle these charges. $3 billion. On top of this, nobody got fired for this. So who at TD Bank is highly corrupt? In September, the bank's president and CEO, Bharat Masrani, announced that he'll be retiring in April of 2025. Oh, really? Is that what's going on? No charges have been brought at this time against Barani, and if history is followed, none will be filed. So this absolutely reeks of corruption.
One of the things that Pierre was talking about in his video yesterday was how there are these super labs that exist in Canada. You mentioned Falkland, British Columbia. I think there was a raid and they found just incredibly sophisticated drug super labs that, are straight out of a Hollywood movie or Breaking Bad. Like who set them up? Like, where are they coming from? Why are the Chinese allowed to operate like this in Canada?
I've been talking to off the record police sources on that Falkland lab case for a while. So let's draw the mind map. This massive industrial scale lab is tucked up into a mountainous town not too far from the Alberta border in British Columbia that has 2 police officers. So it's up there in the woods. There's a fairly, I'm told, sizable motorcycle outlaw gang population in the area. But my sources are very firm in saying this is Mexican cartel run, Chinese triad run, and there are even, as I am told, Iranian state-sponsored crime indications in this operation at the highest levels. And so it could be, the very well-entrenched biker gangs and the street gangs in BC that are running the product around. But when it comes to shipping the precursors into Vancouver's port, remember those 1,000-kilogram seizures I told you about? There's a lot that's not being seized. It's being moved into Vancouver's port, which is controlled by organized crime pretty extensively. Those precursors are sent up to an area of British Columbia with not many police. And then the product, the RCMP confirmed this, is exported out of British Columbia. So it goes, as I know, to Australia, it goes to Japan, it goes to the United States, and that's by shipping. And it gets very complex. I come back to your question, why is so little comparatively caught at a land border? Well, it's being shipped back out of Vancouver port and moved around the world in sophisticated ways.
So the ports have had reduced over the past few years with Justin Trudeau, Carney, and Liberals in power here. The ports have gone down in their security, not up. They don't scan hardly any of the sea cans. They don't scan anything going on rail. So the fact it just comes in by ship, goes out to these super labs, they make stuff, and then goes back out. They're not getting scanned anywhere. This is disgusting. I'm offended that Canada has become this breeding ground for this horrific stuff. And it's even more revolting that the people of Canada who are either sitting on the fence or just diehard liberals, like, wake up to what's going on here. It's not the Conservatives that have done this. The foreign interference ties here have already been linked to Justin Trudeau's party. So we already know there's Chinese foreign interference. And we have to ask questions. Why did Mark Carney go see Xi Jinping last year? Of course, mainstream media is not going to show you this kind of stuff, but Chinese President Xi Jinping meets with former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney. There they are right there. Liberals' new election rules aren't enough to prevent foreign interference. Now, why would that be? Why would they still have lax rules? I wonder why. What are Little Pooh Bear and Count Chocula up to? So it goes on here to name Cameron Ortis, Canada's former top police intelligence official who was convicted of leaking Five Eyes signals intelligence to some of the world's most dangerous Iranian state-sponsored criminals. His case, still cloaked in national security secrecy, is believed to have been involved in Chinese espionage investigations. So it goes on here to say that basically the corruption is in the CBSA as well, and the Americans basically think the CBSA is a complete joke. They would have meetings with the CBSA with high suspicion of someone in the Canadian CBSA that they didn't trust, who they thought was corrupt. And if that person showed up to meetings, they wouldn't say a single thing. They would just close the meeting and leave. That's how bad this situation is. As it says here, Homeland Security, they have no respect for CBSA, none. The expert said CBSA were seen as tax collectors for picking on families coming across the border with 2 bottles of wine and not actually doing police seizures of proper amounts of street candy coming through the border. It goes on to say here, there are real concerns about Asian organized crime figures being at liberal fundraisers with access to Prime Minister Trudeau. One veteran enforcement said, "This is deeply concerning. It was openly discussed in some units." Again, what you're talking about is billions of dollars of criminal profits. This equals real power and influence. He goes on to say he's not accusing Prime Minister of being corrupt or being a part of that, but it'd be naive to think that the ultra-rich criminals didn't use their resources in a way to attempt or sway influence of someone like Justin Trudeau.
And can you help us understand, why don't they find it in the ports? What is the procedure? Are people just allowed to pack their own trailers and put them in without inspection? I'm just trying to wrap my head around how so much drugs are passing through our Canadian cities without being stopped and detected.
This is a huge story. And again, this is why the US intelligence and law enforcement community and politicians like Trump now very openly are concerned. In the 1990s, we had federal port police in Vancouver. As I've written in Willful Blindness, my book, and for the Bureau very recently, documents say that Canadian police were afraid, were outraged when the Christian government pulled the federal port police out of Vancouver and in Canada's other ports and privatized those ports. So what occurred is that foreign organized crime entities were able to apply for docking facilities in Vancouver. The Hells Angels infiltrated the union. Let's just keep focused on Vancouver. And as one of my police expert sources, Gary Clement, says, who's investigated this for years and warned about it for years with no result, the fox is running the henhouse for the ports. There's maybe the latest figures I hear are 1 to at top 5% of containers coming in to Vancouver port are searched. And some of this is open source information. Some of it, I'm telling you, is historical intelligence documents. And some of it is off the record, very fresh and current intelligence from Canadian police sources that say they don't like hearing what Donald Trump's saying more than anyone else. But Donald Trump, unfortunately, is right. We can't defend ourselves.
This is frightening to hear. I mean, we know the state of Canada is bad, but it really is much worse than we realize here. The ports bring in so much stuff every single day. Huge tanker trucks. I used to live in Vancouver. I'd see them all the time, those big tankers outside the port of Vancouver, waiting to dock, drop off all their stuff. Nothing's getting scanned, basically. Almost nothing. They could put anything in there, and that really seems what they've been doing. Now, the Conservative leader of British Columbia here, John Rustad, came out with a new plan to help fix this problem.
You know, there is a huge opportunity that has been untapped, and that is, quite frankly, the Port of Alberni. It is a deep port. It has the ability to be a significant container port for us in British Columbia. And I'm sort of looking at it from a perspective of we can move the containers from Port Alberni to Nanaimo. It gives us an opportunity to look at having a logistics part here in Nanaimo for stuffing and redistribution, and then those containers then would go on to the rest of North America. It would create an entirely new industry right across the island, would support thousands of jobs, and those would be good paying jobs. This is the kind of initiative that we need to be able to support communities, to make sure those jobs are there and make sure those growth are there. So that is something that we're going to be working on. There's the private sector that's interested in doing this. We're going to figure out how to step up to the plate and make sure that this can be done here for the area, because we need these jobs. We need that support, and we need to make sure, quite frankly, as a province, we get the revenues from these sort of things.
As Bruce McGognall here said, John Rustad being elected the Premier of British Columbia would have greatly helped assure Donald Trump that Canada and British Columbia are serious about stopping the flows of lethal street candy. Instead, we have the grinning David Eby. What a disaster that guy is. With that, we've got Moose and Loose here on scene at the Port of Alberni. What you're seeing behind me here is one of the major loading docks for big logging ships, and there's another one actually back there, identical building, those two green and yellow buildings. So this is a very deep port, as John Rustad pointed out in his video. Logging ships come in here, load up. These ships carry tremendous amounts of weight, so deep port here. And so essentially he's proposing that the big Asian tankers come in here, drop off cargo containers, putting a bunch of the cargo containers onto trucks and trucking them over to the port of Nanaimo, and then they'd be put on barges and then sent over to Vancouver, over to Seattle, or any other place on the west coast. This would reduce the congestion in the port of Vancouver, because right now we've got cargo container ships that get stuck in the port of Vancouver and they don't go anywhere. They just sit there for weeks and weeks and months waiting to unload their cargo. So this would allow them to dump all their cargo here and then put on smaller barges that move out quickly and not have to wait for months and months. What's interesting about this is it would reduce greenhouse gases by doing this. David Eby hasn't jumped on this opportunity. It's sitting here waiting for him to create jobs. This would create a lot of longshoreman jobs, or high-paying jobs, and a bunch of other jobs all related to this industry. And where's David Eby? He's nowhere to be found. He's out promoting his Safe Supply program, which has absolutely devastated this province.
Thankfully, Trump is pointing it out, because, I mean, what you described is kind of like a United Nations of bad guys in Canada operating these drug communities, Absolutely. Iranians, Mexicans, Chinese. I wonder if that's what Justin Trudeau envisioned when he called Canada the first post-national state. I know Pierre Poilievre has been hammering Trudeau on this. I want to play a clip. This was from back in December. And Pierre Poilievre explains how it's Justin Trudeau's agenda that has led to this crisis. Let's play this clip.
Results are in on the Prime Minister's radical liberalization of hard drugs. He teamed up with the BC NDP to decriminalize fentanyl, crack, and heroin. He lowered jail sentences for mass producers of deadly fentanyl. And 80% of the fentanyl made in Canada is done so using ingredients that are not even regulated, but come right into our country where they're cooked into that poison, now threatening our trade relationship with the U.S. Will he reverse his radical liberal drug agenda to save lives and jobs?
Pierre knows. He knows what's going on, but he can only say so much as a politician. That's what I think is going on here. It's going to take a full effort of everyone to get rid of Trudeau and the Liberals, get Poilievre in power to clean this up. And it seems that Donald Trump really is the one to spur this on. It does make you ask the question, why didn't the Biden administration do anything about this? With all the U.S. foreign aid corruption coming out.
Sam, I really want to ask you a final question, unrelated. Since I have you on the show, I know that this is right up your wheelhouse. So we had that parliamentary report that came out last week saying that really there was no foreign interference. After all that, after 2 years of headlines, nobody acted in bad faith. So I'm just wondering, I know we only have a few minutes, but what was your takeaway from that report?
Well, I didn't hold back very much when I went on a podcast with 3 former CSIS officers, and we all are of the opinion that the report of Justice Hogue is, there's no other way to put it but a whitewash, or you could call it David Johnston 2.0. A number of people have pointed out, unfortunately, that I wanted to give the justice a chance to see what she would do with the evidence. And with her whitewash report, I think it's important to point out that others have noted historically, she and her former law firm had close connections to 2 Liberal prime ministers, one of them related to Justin Trudeau, his father, Pierre Trudeau. So it looks like a situation.
If you guys want to know more about that, about a week ago, I posted a video with exactly that. Justice Hogue tied to Justin Trudeau through that Blakey law firm. That law firm also represented Justin Trudeau when he quit his job at West Point Grey Academy. How many teachers you know that quit their job and then get a lawyer to do that? Seems a little bit weird, doesn't it?
Related to Justin Trudeau, his father, Pierre Trudeau. So it looks like a situation where I think the good of the Hogue Commission is that thousands of documents came out. And so reporters, diligent, curious Canadians can go in and read the evidence for themselves. There's no denying that China has deeply interfered in our recent elections, but there's also no denying that the commission was given a very narrow mandate, which Justice Hogue admitted, a small time frame to look into these concerns, and at the end of the day, came to a completely different conclusion than, as you know, the NSICOP 2024 report from bipartisan panel of parliamentarians that reviewed something like thousands of the same documents that the Hogue Commission did. And they came to the finding that there are Canadian parliamentarians wittingly working with foreign governments. So I just can't reconcile those 2 different findings. And looking at the evidence without any bias, I think the evidence, and also my private knowledge of more evidence that didn't come out, supports the conclusion that indeed there are politicians wittingly working with foreign governments, benefiting knowingly from foreign government support. And I'll add one quote that never made it into a story with my former employer. My colleague Stuart Bell talked to one of his RCMP sources for one of our stories, and the source said, the amount of politicians entangled in foreign interference is large, and the honest ones had better wake up and understand what they're getting involved with.
Wow. Sam Cooper dropping some more bombs here. Politicians are definitely wittingly involved. We got dirty Asian street fentanyl, Mexican cartels, the Iranian regime. How bad does this get? Like, can this get any worse? Justice Hogue doesn't find anything wrong. No. Directly connected to Pierre Elliott Trudeau, Justin Trudeau. No, didn't find anything. Nope, nothing around here, nothing to look at. Yet their numbers are going up in the polls. People don't realize what's going on. This needs to be spread more and more. Everyone needs to know about what Sam Cooper is talking about here. Unfortunately, mainstream media, it's radio silence. You don't see CTV, CBC, Global, anybody picking this up. But I bet bet you American news would pick this up. So great interview here. If you guys want to check this out, I'll link this up at the end. Also link up my video on Justice Hogue at the end as well, so if you want to get caught up on that. What a complete and utter disaster Justin Trudeau has bred in our country. The man is a disgrace. He's going to just slough it off, say, I have nothing to do with it, when the signs are everywhere. The foreign interference targeting his ministers and MPs, suspicious connections to China, Justice Hogue, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, the whole thing. It stinks. It absolutely stinks. These guys have lax laws for their liberal leadership race. Their party is wide open. There's not even a fee to join them. If that says anything, this madness must end in Canada. It must end.